The Boston Bruins' demise may have finally arrived.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is Thursday, January 23rd, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the program, we are going to discuss last night's loss to the New Jersey Devils, one that continued to point to the perhaps inevitable downswing of this club. It's kind of bad timing, seeing as they just invested heavily in a couple of key free agents this past summer. We'll get into all the storylines, stats, and signals, as well as preview tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets since 2005, and before or after that, I was a full-time hockey news editor for The Score, but hosting this podcast since 2019. And not since, 2016 have the Bruins failed to qualify for the playoffs, and they certainly appear on that track this year. This after a loss last night to the New Jersey Devils, one where they got off to a pretty good start. Pavel Zacha with the steal in the offensive zone, found David Pastrnak, who sent it over to Morgan Geekie. Bruins make it 1-0 at that point. But from there, it was pretty much all New Jersey. And the turning point was a Justin Brazeau goaltender interference penalty on Jacob Markstrom. Dougie Hamilton, our old friend, scored to make it 2-1 on that ensuing power play. Now, Markstrom was forced from the game, and there's no update on his injury, but he was not able to return, and it looks like he could be out for a while. Jake Allen came in and shut the Bruins out in relief of Markstrom, and the Bruins just could not slow down the offense produced by a pretty talented New Jersey Devils team. They were struggling a bit coming into this one, so it was either going to be the Bruins take advantage of the struggling Devils, or the Devils use the struggling Bruins to get back on track as a legit team to be reckoned with in the Eastern Conference. The Bruins allowed another 2 power play goals in this one, so the penalty kill going only 4 for 7. They allowed 3 power play goals, 7 opportunities, could not stay out of the box, which continues to be a problem. You had a Jordan Osterley interference penalty, that Brazeau interference, Charlie Coyle hooking, Morgan Geekie high sticking, Brad Marchand roughing, Vinny Lettieri high sticking, a delay of game by Andrew Peeke in the third period. Morgan Geekie probably said it best after this one when he said, quote, "Our execution has not been there. We're trying to find an answer, and what we are doing isn't good enough. We know it. It's embarrassing, frankly, the way we are letting these games slip away from us." Again, the Bruins had a strong start in the first period. You're up 1-0, 5 minutes and 50 seconds into the game. You do get outshot 12-5 in that opening frame, however. Second period, Devils poured on even more, 17-10, the shot differential. The Bruins tried to mount something in the third, outshooting New Jersey by a score of, or count of 8-6. But by then, It was too late after you had already given up those 4 second period goals to make it 4-1 heading into the third period. This Bruins team just isn't deep enough or good enough. And Charlie Coyle said part of it is when you're winning, you aren't thinking. You're just playing the right way. Sometimes when you lose a few in a row, you're overthinking, not playing the right way. It's a big mental game, and we have to make sure we're always right mentally because that controls the physical part of it. That could be true, but again, these Bruins just aren't that good. They're not that deep enough to withstand a team like the New Jersey Devils, who has legit Stanley Cup aspirations. And increasingly, it looks as though the Bruins are on the retool path. The problem with that, though, is that Don Sweeney already went out this past summer and added big time in free agency with Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, both of whom have been relatively ineffective. You have Lindholm already down on the third line. You have Zadorov misplaying pucks, taking so many penalties. Whether it's Don Sweeney or a replacement, whoever is retooling this team is going to have to contend with the fact that they've already invested heavily in complementing this core with some contracts that are already looking like anchors. Those 2 contracts are on the books for several more years. And while you do have core players in Jeremy Swayman, in Charlie McAvoy, in David Pastrnak to build around, you've already kind of tried to put some solid, walls around that foundation. But right now, it's kind of loose siding and not bricks that you can really lean on. Jeremy Swayman was yanked after the 4th goal in this one. .862 save percentage. Korpisalo allowed 1 goal on 6 shots against. Who knows who will be in net tonight because of that. Maybe they go back to Swayman after giving him an early break. He didn't play the third period last night, so maybe they go back to Swayman, or maybe they turn to Korpisalo to take on his old team. We'll preview that game here later on in the podcast, but when you're looking at a retool here, the Bruins have kind of handcuffed themselves with those 2 contracts. Look, if you were going to retool, this past offseason was a perfect opportunity. They thought they had accomplished that. Remember, last year, people have been predicting the Bruins' downswing for a number of years now. And we would have thought that it would have come immediately after the retirements of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. Somehow, some way, they were able to exceed expectations last season, in a transition year. They got a lot of mileage out of some players who they signed on discount contracts. They got a lot of mileage out of career years from Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha, which are not on track to be repeated. Jake DeBrusk was still around, scoring goals. You had that 2-headed goaltending duo that really covered up a lot of defensive deficiencies. Yes, the Bruins are playing without Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm, and I guarantee Don Sweeney's sitting there thinking it's hard to evaluate this team without those 2 guys in the lineup. But to expect the Bruins to bounce back, to get into a playoff spot, and to win a round or 2 is probably ill-advised at this point. They're not a playoff team, even though they were said to have been built for the playoffs with the moves that they had made. They wanted to get faster. They got anything but. They're bigger. But instead of being the big bad Bruins, they're more like the bad big Bruins. And they find themselves in a real hole here, in a real dogfight for a playoff spot. We'll update the standings here in a moment. Take a look at some other stats and signals to take away from last night's game. But overall, it's not looking great for our Boston Bruins, and we'll discuss that more here as the podcast continues. It's the conference championship weekend in the NFL, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's take a look at some key stats and signals from last night's game. I mentioned the Bruins giving up 3 power play goals on 7 opportunities for the New Jersey Devils. The Bruins remain the most penalized team in the NHL. That's been a problem all season long. And the penalty kill has not been strong enough to withstand that those constant trips to the penalty box. They have a league high 526 minutes in penalties. That's 10 minutes and 44 minutes of penalties per game on average. That's absolutely wild. They have taken 200. Actually, the Panthers lead the way with 211 penalties. Bruins have 209. The Bruins have drawn 212 penalties, so they're actually a positive when it comes to net penalties. But the most penalty minutes in the NHL, and they lead the way. They're third in minor penalties. At any rate, a very highly penalized team, and that is not going to be a recipe for success. The Bruins last night dominated in possession. The Devils had 55% of the shot attempts, 60% of the shots, 62.3% of the scoring chances, 64.3% of the high danger chances, and certainly did deserve to win last night's game. The Bruins were led last night in shots by David Pastrnak. No surprise, he had 5. Johnny Beecher, Morgan Geekie, Brad Marchand, each chipping in 2, as did Brandon Carlo. But again, they were not able to beat Jake Allen in his relief stint. And the Bruins penalty kill, once again, letting them down here with only killing 4 of 7 minor penalties. And the Bruins penalty kill now sits at, let's see, what's their success rate on the penalty kill? 75%, which is good for, let's see here. Where do they rank on the penalty kill? 75%, which is good for 25th in the NHL. Their power play is 13.6, which is good for 30th in the NHL. So some real problems there for the Boston Bruins on special teams, to be sure. Now, when it comes to the standings, the Bruins right now in the Eastern Conference find themselves 11th in terms of point percentage, just ever so slightly behind the New York Rangers, who are at 532. The Bruins are at 531. The Rangers are 2 points back, but with 2 games in hand. Even the Flyers are only 2 points back with 1 game in hand. They're at 521. The Bruins now are at minus 24 in goal differential, which is still second worst in the conference. The Penguins are at minus 32. In terms of total points, the Bruins sit in 10th, technically tied with Ottawa and Montreal for a wild card spot. Only 1 point back of Tampa Bay for third in the Atlantic. But the Canadiens and Senators have only played 47 games, whereas the Bruins have played 49. The Lightning have played 46 games. So their point percentage is much higher. And again, the Bruins are only 2 points up on New York and Philly, and they each have games in hand. So the Bruins, if they lose tonight to Ottawa, will be even further behind the 8 ball. And with looking at the Eastern Conference, you would think that with the top 6 is pretty clear at the moment, you would think that the Rangers would be a lock for the playoffs coming off a President's Trophy win. So that's like 7 teams there that should be good for the playoffs based on how things have gone so far this season. The Rangers have fallen out. That's opened up 2 spots. The Blue Jackets are quite a story, of course. The Canadiens coming out of nowhere. The Senators have always had the look of a team that could jump up and take a spot. We'll preview that game coming up here tonight, a huge game for the Boston Bruins. So they're fighting off a number of teams here, and it's really becoming a question as to whether it's even worth pursuing that, seeing as A, if they do make the playoffs, they're likely one and done, and B, with so many teams in the mix, it's going to be a real seller's market here because the fewer the sellers, the more the buyers may be willing to cough it up. And there are certainly some movable pieces here on the Boston Bruins. If you're looking to a retool, it can't just be pending free agents that you're looking to move, but also some veterans like a Charlie Coyle or a Brandon Carlo who could fetch a good return from teams looking to shore up for a playoff run and perhaps for the next couple of seasons. As I drop my pencil, that's something we'll have to consider here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast moving forward. Trade deadline still a ways away, March 7th, with the Four Nations face-off in the mix there. In the more immediate future, the Bruins have a game against the Ottawa Senators coming up tonight, and we'll preview that here as the podcast continues. I absolutely love attending hockey games, baseball games, concerts, comedy shows, and the first place that I turn for ticket options is GameTime. GameTime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature called GameTime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming concert, Dashboard Confessional, Goo Goo Dolls, full disclosure, and I could see views from the seats and also see the all-in pricing, so there's no hidden fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Because what time is it? It's game time. Bruins, Senators, tonight in Boston. It's a huge game with massive playoff implications. As we saw just a few days ago when the Bruins looked to have a win in hand in Ottawa, 5-3 lead late in the third period. They coughed up those 2 goals and ended up losing in a shootout. This is the third of 4 meetings between these 2 teams. The Senators have won both of them so far. And they're a team that the Bruins are certainly fighting with for a playoff spot. And while the Bruins have picked up 2 points in those 2 games, the Senators getting those extra points, it's kind of the difference right now. If the Bruins had gotten those extra points, they would be up on the Senators at the moment. David Pastrnak is red hot right now. He was kept off the score sheet last night, ending a point streak, but he has 5 goals, 7 assists over his past 5 games. The Senators' offense a bit quiet lately. Josh Norris leading the way with 3 points, 2 goals. Shane Pinto with 3 assists. I believe Josh Norris was banged up and may not be able to go tonight as well. So that would be a bonus for the Bruins. Ottawa's led in scoring by Tim Stützle, Drake Batherson, Brady Tkachuk. And the Senators are coming into this one. Yes, they beat the Bruins. Then they beat the Devils, who the Bruins lost to last night. They're coming off a pretty disheartening loss to New York Rangers the other night, though, a 5-0 loss. Levi Merilainen, who had been very strong for them as of late, really coming back down to earth over the past couple of games, including that one against against the Bruins. Again, we'll see who the Bruins turn to in net, whether they go back to Swayman after he was pulled or roll with Korpisalo against his former team. We could see Anton Forsberg, who struggled a bit for Ottawa, but had a very strong game the other night against the New Jersey Devils. Linus Ullmark is traveling with the team, so he will be in Boston tonight, but not sure if he's quite ready to jump back into even backing up for the Ottawa Senators. Actually, it looks like Julian McKenzie of The Athletic reporting the Senators are putting Linus Ullmark on LTIR to make way for David Perron's return to the lineup. Ullmark has already missed 10 games in 24 days, so they can take him off at any time. They're just trying to make some space here to activate Perron, so it looks like it will be either Merilainen or Forsberg going for the Senators tonight. Now, Ottawa, they have a 12th ranked power play. The Bruins really struggling on the penalty kill last night. It's super important to stay out of the box. Ottawa's penalty kill is 18th ranked. Their defense is 9th ranked, 2.79 goals per game. That's the exact number that they're scoring per game, which is 24th. The Bruins offense is 26th, and their team defense is 24th. Cannot stress how big this game is for both teams. With the regulation win, the Senators could go 4 points clear of the Bruins in the standings with fewer games played. The Bruins right now are 23, 20, and 6. That means they've won 23 games and they have lost 26. So the 500 and above is a bit deceiving, seeing as there's that loser point in the mix. It should be an entertaining one for sure. The last game was one of the more entertaining games of the year. And with so much on the line, the Bruins are coming in on the second of a back-to-back. The Senators are a bit more rested because they did not play last night. And so it could make for another disappointing one tonight for our Bruins, but definitely one to watch with major playoff implications. Elsewhere, the Canadiens and Red Wings are playing. The Red Wings looking to get back in the mix after their recent hot streak. Canadiens right there in the thick of it, which is pretty surprising. The Rangers take on the Flyers, a team that's still in the mix, both of them. The Blue Jackets, big win last night over Ottawa. They're looking to keep it going against the Hurricanes tonight. I think those are the biggest games with implications for the Bruins around the NHL. Every point matters right now. There's no no ignoring it. You have to stay on top of it and get points where you can. We'll just see how things shake out tonight. Tomorrow, we'll be back to recap the game against the Ottawa, to preview Saturday's game against Colorado, which will be a tough one, and bring you all the latest on the black and gold here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, because that is what we are all about. Check out Locked On Fantasy next for all the latest to give you an edge in your league this week. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here tomorrow.